The moment the transmission began, Earth's sky dimmed, not from clouds, but from silence. All civilian signals cut out, overridden by a flickering, static-choked image. The seal of the Galactic Federation glowed blue, crystalline, and cold. Then came the voice, not synthetic, but solemn. Alien. Dr. Leona Vex, Earth's ambassador to the Federation, is hereby sentenced to execution by stellar flare, to be carried out at first light on Delveth 9. The charge: inciting planetary insurrection and attempting to destabilize interstellar peace. No trial broadcast. No appeal. Just a verdict. Somewhere in a wind-blasted desert outpost on the edge of Earth's lunar defense zone, Rourke Maddox watched the flicker of the transmission in a makeshift war room, surrounded by sand and silence. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stared. The last image on the screen was Vex's bruised face, a red gash down her temple. Her voice had been muted. Her eyes hadn't. He lit a cigarette with a tremble he didn't let show. "She was a diplomat," said Krenna, a lunar comms officer standing nearby. "Not even military." Rourke exhaled smoke. "Didn't matter. They wanted a symbol. They got one." He crushed the cigarette under his boot and turned to the tactical map pinned on the wall, an outdated star chart smeared with grease pencil marks and paper tabs. His gaze fell to one name, Delveth 9. He remembered the stories. A moon prison so remote its orbit disrupted its own gravity. Inmates ran it. Warlords called it home. Federation didn't govern it, it used it. Public executions there weren't punishment. They were theater. Krenna stepped closer. "You can't be serious." "I haven't said anything." "You're thinking it." "Don't." He met her eyes. "They'll kill her in under 36 hours. I'm going. That's suicide. No extraction team. No support. You won't even get past the gravity well." "Good." He reached for his gear. "Means they won't see me coming." By nightfall, he was gone. No farewell. No plan filed. Only a name scratched into the smuggler's manifest on a cargo freighter bound for Thule Station. The pilot was a crusty Tillen with half a beak and no regard for laws. Just credits. "You know they scan everything near Delveth." The Tillen croaked as they entered warp prep. "You so much as breathe wrong, they'll atomize us." "I don't plan to breathe at all once I'm inside," Rourke said, checking the magnetic seal on his chest plate. The pilot whistled. "Humans are insane." Rourke gave a thin smile. "Yeah. That's why they're afraid of us." During the warp jump, time felt like rubber stretched thin. Rourke didn't sleep. Instead, he sat in the dim cargo hold and pulled out an old wristband with a flickering holopic, his wife, Emra, laughing on a beach in Dakar, 10 years before her arrest. 10 years before the Federation labeled her an Earth-First extremist for organizing food convoys to fringe colonies. They never released her body. He remembered the same phrase, broadcast on every channel, cold as steel. "Execution carried out in accordance with Council protocol." Now it was Vex. Another name. Another face. Another damn execution dressed as order. Rourke activated his wrist-embedded HUD. Federation lock cycles showed Delveth 9 would enter its sunrise window in 32 hours. If he didn't reach the surface in 6, he'd miss the drop ship rotation, and the security net would close. No room for second chances. When they exited warp near Thule Station, Rourke jumped ship via maintenance pod. No official logs, no Federation pings. Just him, a compressed stealth suit, and a tunnel into hell. He entered the orbit of Delveth 9 like a ghost, no heat trail, no signal. Only falling. The pod's descent was rough. Ice-sheared cliffs and sunburnt rock flashed past the viewport as it skidded into a canyon ravine. He slammed into the crash webbing hard enough to crack a rib. He gritted his teeth and climbed out, bleeding into his armor. Above him, black spires jutted from the surface like broken bones. Metal towers welded by ancient inmates. Smoke poured from a dozen chimneys. Turrets whirred in lazy arcs. Rourke activated his pulse dampeners and dropped low, boots crunching soft on iron dust. His objective was beneath the execution compound, an old waste shaft that hadn't been used since the facility automated its disposal system. No one guarded it because no one ever came back from inside. He did. The shaft walls were slick with condensation and rust. Rourke rappelled downward in silence, each footfall a whisper. At the base, a maintenance corridor loomed, barely lit by backup power. He checked his map. The detention core was 3 levels above, right under the public platform. Voices echoed ahead. Alien. Slurred. 2 prison guards, an Ovac brute and a reptilian Sincal, stood beside a service door, trading smokes and jokes about the new meet scheduled for sunrise. Human female, the Sincal hissed. Not much scream in her. The Ovac chuckled, gurgling mucus. Rourke moved like a knife. The Ovac never saw the knife sink into its throat. The Sincal barely turned before Rourke snapped its spine with a silent twist. He dragged the bodies into a coolant chute and pressed forward. Inside the cell block, everything reeked of ammonia and rot. Light flickered. Inmates huddled behind locked doors, some pleading, others laughing. He found her in the last cell. Leona Vex sat against the wall, cuffed and bruised, her Federation robe torn, but her posture upright. Her eyes tracked him immediately. "You're not a guard." "No." "Earth sent you?" Rourke deactivated the field barrier with a code patch. "No. Earth didn't send anyone." She tilted her head. "Then why are you here?" He paused. "Because I don't let them kill decent people twice." She stared at him for a heartbeat, then stood, limping toward him. "You don't understand. They're not executing me for treason. They're silencing me. I found something big. Later. There might not be a later." Rourke handed her a field blaster. "Then let's make one." He looked up at the flickering status panel. 30 hours until sunrise. 30 hours to fight a war, alone, on a moon built for death. Rourke Maddox checked his weapon and nodded to Vex. "Let's wreck their show." Delveth 9 didn't sleep. It churned. Beneath its rusted surface, power generators groaned like dying titans. Pipes hissed, steam billowed, and the air tasted like scorched iron. Rourke led Vex through a series of forgotten corridors, long since abandoned by Federation workers. Now gang signs carved into the walls warned outsiders in alien tongues. "Enter, you belong to the pit." He kept her close, one hand on his blaster, eyes scanning every shadow. "You limping bad?" he asked low. "Nothing broken," Vex replied, breath steady. "Just bruised dignity." "Good. That's easier to ignore." They reached a utility shaft grated with mesh flooring. Through it, dozens of inmates patrolled the floor below, some armored in scavenged Federation gear, others half-naked and painted in tribal runes. The prison's command hierarchy was long dead. Now it was ruled by warlords. Gangs. Clans that thrived in chaos. A shrill bell echoed from the upper levels. Vex flinched. "That's the shift alarm." "Meaning?" "Meaning they're prepping the orbital lift. I was supposed to be transferred topside tonight." Rourke's jaw tightened. "They're moving fast. Faster than expected." He pulled up his wrist HUD and scanned the schematic. The orbital lift bay sat 6 levels above. Direct access was suicide. He'd have to cut through Sector 9A, the worst of the unregulated cell blocks. Rumors said even guards avoided it. Too wild. Too unstable. He made a decision. "Shortcut," he muttered. "Stay close. Don't talk." They dropped into Sector 9A through a crumbling wall vent. Immediately, the temperature spiked. Sweat pooled under Rourke's armor as torchlight flickered along the corridor. Real fire, not electric. Primitive, almost ceremonial. A dozen prisoners lounged in the central yard, weapons resting on knees, eyes sharp. One rose when he spotted them. His skin was silvered, eyes milky white, a Scarian, and not just any. "A hunter," Rourke whispered. "You know him?" Vex asked. "His kind hunted humans during the early colonization wars." The Scarian tilted his head, sniffing the air. "You walk like death." the creature said in a voice of broken glass. And she smells of judgment. Rourke didn't blink. She's not yours. And I'm not here for blood. The Scarian bared his teeth. Then you will leave in pieces. Rourke fired once. The shot took off the Scarian's left arm. The others surged forward, weapons raised, but hesitated at Rourke's second move. He grabbed a nearby fuel canister and yanked out its igniter. Don't, he warned. A moment passed. Then they backed off, murmuring among themselves, dragging the injured hunter away. Vex stared at him. You always this diplomatic? Rourke lowered the canister. Only when I'm outnumbered. Past Sector 9A, they entered the auxiliary transport tunnel, dark, narrow, and damp. The lift shaft loomed ahead, a massive vertical cylinder glowing with pulsing red light. Magnetic rails ran its length, humming with stored energy. A lone security drone hovered near the platform, scanning the area. Rourke dropped into a crouch and pulled out a pulse knife. He pointed. Distraction. I'll flank. Vex didn't wait. She stepped into the open and called out in a perfect, clipped Federation dialect. This is Ambassador Vex. Cease surveillance and respond to clearance protocol. The drone buzzed toward her, lights blinking. That's when Rourke dropped from above, slicing through its core. The drone fizzled and dropped like a stone. Well played, Vex said. Nice bluff. Wasn't bluffing. I still technically outrank garbage bots. He smirked and accessed the terminal. The platform was scheduled for launch in 10 minutes. Already preloaded. 1 slot for cargo. 1 for the condemned. You're riding up caged unless we switch IDs, Rourke said. They'll skin me. Biometrics. He hesitated, then nodded. Then we do it the hard way. They slipped into the prep deck where guards armed with shock lances were securing the prisoner crate. One tapped at a terminal while 2 others dragged a food cart. None expected an attack. Rourke moved first, slamming a guard into the crate wall with enough force to dent steel. Vex grabbed a shock lance and spun it into the next one's gut. The third tried to run but didn't get far. A single shot silenced him. With the deck clear, Rourke turned to the crate. Get in. Vex hesitated. You're taking my place? He didn't answer. Just strip the fallen guard's helmet and body plate, then push the cart into the crate as a decoy. Inside, he braced himself between the slats, angled to keep his pulse rifle hidden. You better be right about this, he said. Vex looked at him once, then slammed the door. The crate sealed. Minutes later, guards loaded it onto the orbital lift, unaware. The shaft shuddered as it activated. The crate jolted upward, 10 meters per second, rocketing toward the hangar pad that linked to the Federation's orbital dock. Rourke counted breaths. At 60 seconds, the crate reached the platform. The hatch hissed open. White light spilled in. 2 armored enforcers stood waiting, their rifles raised. Prisoner secure, one of them said into his comms. Rourke exploded out. He drove a knee into the first enforcer's chest, spun, and shot the second mid-turn. Sirens screamed instantly, security breach. Alarms howled across the bay. He raced toward the control panel and saw what he feared. A dropship already hovered above the pad, engines warming. A containment pod sat attached beneath it, sealed. Vex was inside. The ship began to rise. Rourke sprinted. No time. He dove onto the lower platform just as the dropship's magnetic clamps released. The pod lifted with a roar of heat. He grabbed the underside, slammed a magnetic tether into the hull, and climbed. Above him, the stars spun. Below, the prison moon shrank. He was alone on the belly of a rising execution vessel, with a ticking clock and nothing left to lose. He reached the hatch and keyed into the service panel. It shocked him, unauthorized input. He yanked a power cell from his belt, shorted the circuit, and punched through the lock. The hatch blew open. Rourke climbed in. A single guard inside spun. Too late. Rourke fired once, then staggered into the control chamber. Vex looked up from the containment pod's viewport. You took your time, she muttered through the intercom. Traffic. Rourke said, cracking his neck. He scanned the ship's logs. Destination, execution platform geosynchronous orbit. Not anymore, he said. He gripped the controls and altered course. Below them, alarms lit the Federation network. Dozens of ships pinged the dropship's ID. They had maybe 20 minutes. But for now, they were free. The dropship groaned as it banked hard through Delvith 9's upper atmosphere, the hull straining under heat pressure. Rourke gripped the controls tight, navigating blind through security protocols he wasn't supposed to even see, let alone override. 4 tailing ships just went live, Vex said from the co-pilot's seat. She was still cuffed, but alert, sharp, calculating. Interceptor class. They're going to cut us off before we clear the orbital defense grid. Not if we're ghosts, Rourke muttered. He flipped 3 toggles, rerouting the ship's signature to mimic an outgoing trash barge. Vex raised a brow. You're spoofing our ID with a garbage hauler's clearance? Fitting, considering their opinion of us. The console flashed green. The Federation grid accepted the spoof, for now. Behind them, Delvith 9 shrank into shadow. But the comms crackled with new warnings. A drone squadron had been dispatched. One ship alone wouldn't get them far. We need cover, Vex said. Agreed. Rourke cut the main drive and let them drift toward a derelict mining belt 3 clicks off their current vector. The asteroid field was a navigation nightmare but offered one advantage: clutter. Inside the field, he flipped the ship to manual and dove between 2 spinning boulders the size of city blocks. G-forces slammed into them. Vex gritted her teeth. How good are you at this? I've crashed fewer than I've landed. That count? A flash of light cut through the dark. The first drone zipped past, scanning. Rourke killed all output. No power, no emissions. The ship became a dead rock among thousands. The drone slowed, hovered, then passed. Rourke waited another 10 seconds before reactivating systems. We've got a window. Where to? Xyrothon Prime. Vex's eyes narrowed. The capital? He nodded. That's where this ends. You're insane. They already called me that. Might as well make it official. Hours later, they coasted into deep space, massed under a cargo freighter's shadow. Vex leaned over the terminal, fingers flying. They fabricated the case, she said flatly. Rourke looked up. You're sure? I found the Sovereign Protocol buried in Federation archives. A weapons program, not a peace treaty. They're building a Sundrill on Xyrothon's second moon, capable of igniting planetary cores. Earth scheduled for test fire. Rourke's blood chilled. How long? Vex hesitated. 10 days. He clenched his fists. And your execution would have silenced the only witness. She nodded. There are logs. Communications. Schematics. But only accessible from the Council vault. Then we break in. Vex laughed once, dry and sharp. You really don't know what you're suggesting. I do. That's the problem. They reached the outer sector of Xyrothon Prime in a repainted courier vessel borrowed from a smuggler's haven in the Curious Rift. No one questioned a courier bringing classified intel. Especially one marked with official branding, courtesy of Vex's override credentials. The planet loomed ahead, wrapped in sapphire clouds and silver city rings. The core of Federation power. We land in Capital Sector 6, Rourke said. I've got a contact, engineer class. He owes me. Vex didn't ask what for. Capital Sector 6 was a fortress disguised as a city. Glass towers stabbed the clouds. Streets shimmered with artificial gravity stabilizers. Every citizen carried biometric tags. Every vehicle was monitored. Rourke and Vex moved through it like blades through silk, fast, silent, deadly. Their contact, Tamron, met them in a power relay tunnel. You said you'd never come back here, Tamron whispered, adjusting his visor. Now you show up with her? The whole planet wants her dead. Rourke ignored that. Can you get us into the vault? Tamron sighed. Maybe. But you'll have to pass through the Oculus Ring. What's the catch? You'll be seen. Every camera, every sensor, every retinal scanner feeds to the Council AI. Vex stepped forward. Then we scramble it. Tamarin blinked. You want to blind the Oculus? She nodded. For 2 minutes. That's all we need. Tamarin groaned. That'll trip every silent alarm from here to the outer rings. Then make those 2 minutes count. They suited up. Vex in Federation livery, Rourke in guard armor. They passed through the first 3 security layers using Vex ID, reactivated and flushed through a corrupted diplomatic channel Tamarin had embedded years ago. Then came the Oculus chamber. A column of silver light stretched from floor to ceiling, bathing them in white heat. The AI was awake. Watching. Vex whispered. Now. Tamarin hit the override. Every light cut out. They ran. Rourke kicked through the vault door just as backup generators came online. Vex dove to the terminal and uploaded a spike. Data began flowing. But it wasn't just files. Hollow recordings. Council meetings. Blueprints of the Sundrill. Orders with Kyle's seal. This is it, she said. Proof. All of it. Rourke pulled her up. Then we go live. He activated a satellite uplink on his gauntlet. Earth's network, old tech, ignored by the Federation. But still functional. A single burst transmission carried the data. To every independent colony. Every neutral outpost. Every pirate haven and frontier world. And Earth. Sirens howled. Federation soldiers burst into the vault, weapons raised. Don't move! Vex raised her hands. Rourke didn't. Careful, he growled. I'm not in a diplomatic mood. Kyle entered last, flanked by elite guards. His robe shimmered like liquid glass. His face cold. You, he said to Vex, should have burned quietly. And you, she replied, should have chosen your lies more carefully. Kyle's expression didn't change. Execute them both. Rourke raised his blaster. Kyle smiled. We're in the heart of the Federation. What will you do, soldier? Rourke stepped forward. Remind you why humans are feared. He fired. Chaos exploded. Rourke dropped 3 guards in seconds. Vex tackled the data core and yanked the spike. Tamarin rerouted firewalls to buy them 30 seconds. Just enough. They leapt through a maintenance shaft as plasma rounds scorched the walls. Above them, the council chamber erupted in alarms. Below them, one message echoed across the galaxy. Sovereign protocol is not peace. It is extinction. And now, the galaxy knew. Xyrathon Prime was no longer calm. The elegant capital planet of the Galactic Federation seethed with unrest. City banners now flickered erratically. Transports rerouted. Civilian chatter across public networks had spiraled from curiosity to chaos in under an hour. The Sovereign Protocol leak spread faster than the Council could control. Inside the glass-walled summit chamber at the apex of the Citadel spire, the Federation's highest seat of power convened in emergency session. 12 lords, each representing an empire, species, or dominion, sat in silence around a circular obsidian table. Their expressions were unreadable, their gestures slow and deliberate. Lord Varenth Kyle stood at the center, his back straight, his voice calm. The data breach, he said, is a fabrication. Human propaganda, meant to incite distrust. A counselor from the Jareen Confederacy, a race of crystalline bipeds, tilted their head. And yet your seal is on every document. Kyle smiled faintly. Seals can be forged. Especially by a species that built an entire digital war doctrine on subterfuge. Another voice cut through the murmur. You ordered the drill, Kyle. It came from Ambassador Juno Vareth, the representative of the outer colonies. She stood unblinking, arms folded. You designated Earth as a target before the Council was ever informed. Because Earth has grown erratic, Kyle answered. Dangerous. Their ambassador was arrested for inciting rebellion, and now her co-conspirator, an armed human, has infiltrated our capital. A murmur rippled across the room. That's when the doors slammed open. Rourke Maddox stepped in. 2 security guards lay unconscious outside the threshold. His armor was scorched, visor cracked, rifle slung across his back. And beside him, Dr. Leona Vex, chin high, stride unshaken. Kyle's fingers twitched. "This chamber is sealed." "It was," Rourke said, cutting him off. "Until your own staff opened it." A quiet gasp. From the shadows near the diplomatic balcony, Tamarin appeared, flanked by 2 technicians from the Planetary Network Corps. One held a recording device. The other carried Kyle's personal datapad, cracked open and broadcasting live. "Everything you've said in the last hour," Tamarin said, "has been streamed to the public feed. Including your latest lie." Kyle's mask cracked, barely, but enough. "You fools think this proves anything?" Kyle snapped, voice suddenly sharpened. "One man's word against the Order of the Stars? Against thousands of years of stability?" "No," Bex said calmly. "It's not one man. It's the truth. And now billions know it." Rourke moved forward, placing the sovereign spike on the table. "Not an opinion. Not a claim. Data. Orders. Schedules. Power draw reports from your secret lunar weapon. Signed by you. Backed by 3 vault keys and 2 biometric confirmations." Kyle's gaze drifted toward the council members. Several averted their eyes. Others leaned forward, quietly examining the spike. He knew then, control was slipping. Rourke stepped closer. "You wanted to erase Earth because you couldn't control it. Because we scared you. You should be afraid of what comes next," Kyle said, voice low. "Do you think the empires will bow to your noise? To your little display?" "No," Rourke said. "But they'll question why your empire needed silence to survive." A beat of silence followed. Then Counselor Ithis from the Vorton swarm spoke, her voice like clicking stone. "Kyle, you've overstepped." Counselor Trellis, the amphibious judge of the Reef States, added, "This breaks 12 charter accords." Even the ancient Ilari, long neutral, spoke up at last. "Earth will not be punished for exposing truth." Kyle hissed, "You are blind. They are parasites." "You're dismissed," Beck said, cutting him cleanly. Gasps echoed. Kyle's hand reached for his belt. Too late. Rourke drew and fired in a blink. A shock pulse struck Kyle square in the chest, sending him sprawling backward into the edge of the table. His hand fell limp, weapons slipping from his grip. Security swarmed in, weapons trained. "Alive," Rourke said. "He stands trial." Outside the Citadel, chaos calmed into calculation. News feeds across the galaxy broadcast scenes from the summit chamber. Protesters in Federation colonies cheered. Independent systems called for audits. The Sovereign Protocol was dead. Earth's ambassador was reinstated. Her sentence nullified. The Federation passed an emergency measure placing executive war powers under Council consensus, no longer at the discretion of any single lord. It was, effectively, the end of Kyle's empire. Rourke stood on the Council balcony with Vex, watching the city reorient itself. "You just crippled a 1,000-year dynasty," she said. "I only kicked it. Truth knocked it over." He looked out at the glimmering city, remembering every corridor of Delveth 9, every blood-slicked tunnel, every moment the Federation thought Earth would bow. "They'll rebuild," Vex said. "I know," he replied. "So will we." She studied him. "You could stay. Earth will want heroes." He shook his head. "I didn't do this for medals." "Then what?" Rourke turned, walking away from the light of the council chamber. "For one woman who never came back. And for the next who almost didn't." In a quiet corner of the universe, a new message pulsed through back channels, bouncing across black market satellites. "The cause lives." A warning. A reminder. A beginning. 3 weeks later, the galaxy had shifted. The Federation Council held daily public sessions now. Delegates spoke with less certainty, more caution. Military funding was under audit. The Sovereign Protocol's site on Xyrothon's second moon had been seized and dismantled, by unanimous vote. A Federation tribunal prepared to try Lord Varenth Kyle for conspiracy, abuse of executive power, and attempted genocide. But Rourke Maddox wasn't there to see any of it. He was in the Outer Rim, boarding a rusted cargo shuttle with no name, a forged ID chip embedded in his wrist, and nothing but a black duffel slung over his shoulder. A tired freighter captain looked him over. "Name? Does it matter?" Rourke asked. The man shrugged. "No questions then. Just work." Rourke nodded, stepped aboard, and vanished into the noise of engine hum and metal groans. No reporters. No medals. No farewells. Exactly how he wanted it. Back on Earth, Ambassador Leona Vex sat before a senate of freshly humbled leaders, presenting a revised diplomatic charter. She moved with poise but spoke with fire. Her voice had weight now, earned weight. She didn't demand respect. She commanded it. "Injustice," she said, "doesn't need permission to spread. It only needs silence. And we were quiet too long." She placed a silver data spike on the table. "Let this remind us what it took to speak again." The vote passed. Earth remained a sovereign member of the Federation, but with new conditions. No executive mandates. No blind signatures. Earth would speak for itself now. In the deep corridors of the Federation's internal archives, a junior analyst stumbled on an encrypted message hidden beneath Kyle's deleted communications. She hesitated, flagged it for review, and handed it up the chain. Hours later, the decrypted file appeared on Admiral Turo's desk. "Initiate fallback, Helix Protocol. Phase 2 lives. Location, Heggery Drift. Project Overseer unknown. Asset retrieval priority high." Turo's frowned. The Sovereign Protocol wasn't the only project. Elsewhere in the galaxy, in a half-collapsed station orbiting a dead star, a cloaked figure stepped into a dark room and pulled a case from beneath the floor panels. Inside, a Federation crest half-melted, a thumb drive, and a sealed holopic of Varenth Kyle, standing beside a man who looked unmistakably human. The figure exhaled slowly and keyed a message into the portable transmitter. "He's gone quiet. But the cause echoes. New directive to follow." Meanwhile, Rourke Maddox stood on the edge of a quiet cliffside on a backwater world with no real name, just Sector 8 Delta. The horizon stretched wide, all dry air and sun-scarred rock. Wind tugged at his jacket. Beside him, a steel crate, newly arrived, marked with Earth's seal. He knelt and opened it. Inside, a folded U.S. Marine uniform, cleaned and sealed. A letter signed in pen. "You were never meant to disappear. But we understand why you did. Thank you, Commander." He folded the letter without reading it twice. Behind him, someone approached. He didn't turn. "Didn't expect you to find me this fast," he said. Tamron stepped up beside him. "I didn't. Vex did. She just didn't follow." Rourke stood. "Is she okay?" "Promoted. And dangerous. The right kind." They stood in silence for a beat. "You know," Tamron added, "they say the Federation's already rewriting the archives. Downplaying the execution. Softening the protocol." Rourke chuckled without humor. "Of course they are. She wanted me to ask, just once, if you'd come back." "I won't." Tamron didn't argue. Instead, he opened his satchel and handed over a data chip. "Found this in one of Kyle's shadow caches. He was building something bigger. Something patient." Rourke slipped the chip into his gauntlet, scanned it. Coordinates. An outline of a Second-Tier War asset buried deep in Heggery Drift. "He had backup plans," Rourke muttered. "More than one." Rourke looked up. The sky overhead was vast. Too vast to ignore. "You coming?" Tamron asked. "Not yet. But soon." That night, in the silence of his shelter, Rourke replayed a message. Not an official one. Just Vex's voice, stored on an encrypted loop. "You were the match. I was the fuse. The Federation never saw the fire coming. I won't thank you again. You wouldn't like that. But you were right, Rourke. A cause needs a voice. It also needs a blade. He let the recording end. Let the night settle. And then, without ceremony, he pulled out a long rifle, cleaned it, recalibrated the sights, and packed it next to the stolen Federation ship. The next morning, he was gone again. Across 1,000 systems, rumors spread. Whispers of a man, no name, no face, who had once walked into a prison moon and walked out with the truth. They called him traitor. Then they called him legend. Some called him dangerous. But to those who watched closely, especially those planning to silence worlds again, he was something far worse. A promise. That the cause still lived. And it remembered everything.